Bonjour, bon matin. It's great to be here.
Good morning, all.
And welcome to your house, the house that is owned by all Canadians, the train station of Via Rail. Just try to get the charts to move here. Thank you. So for Via Rail Canada, the way we'd like to approach this subject is look at 2017 as an opportunity for Canadians to listen, learn about Canada, and live Canada, as if Canada was a word to describe an ideal, a dream, a vision of a good place, as my kids like to remind me. They like to be in a good place. When they're angry with me, they say, I'm not in a good place right now, so keep on talking, Dad. So so learn to live Canada. Et c'est à apprendre à s'écouter les uns les autres.
And learn to listen to one another. That's how you learn to know people and know one another. And that's how you learn all about Canada and understand Canada.
Of the railway. We heard it this morning. It was alluded to a few times. But the railway was, as it was mentioned, starting here in Manitoba, point west, to develop all the way to the Pacific, which ended up with Confederation, right? The promise of Confederation was, the embodiment of Confederation of the time was this steel band linking the Atlantic to the Pacific. And that great project was accomplished, and the railway was centered to that physical unification of the country. Once you have the physical unification, then you go with the people element of it. And we've heard from Pier 21 in Halifax, where there is a train station that will be holding a meeting like this in a few weeks' time with Canadians from the Maritimes. Europeans came and joined our shores, came all the way out here, and we've heard about Ukrainian settlements. And yesterday, Wednesday in Saskatoon, there were many representatives of the Ukrainian community who go back to homesteads of the 1800s. And the Icelandic population here in Winnipeg. I was talking earlier to a friend of mine from Gormley, and our vice chairman, Eric Stephenson, is from here in Winnipeg, a great representative of the people of Iceland who've settled here in Canada. So the railway was at the center of populating Canada. And then history tells us that Canada came of age, unfortunately, through war, through global conflicts. The Battle of Vimy Ridge, which is commemorated in banknotes now, remind all Canadians of that period of time where Canada stood up for freedom and justice. And the railway played a key role in carrying Canadian soldiers to and from those European battlefields. So it was only natural that in the last few years we decided to start to identify that symbolism of the history of the railway and project it towards its future. And that's why we struck a partnership with the Institute of Canadian Citizenship, of which you'll hear of a bit later, through which new Canadians, and as you know there's 150,000 of them that join Canada every year, have an opportunity to visit Canada on Via Rail by taking on a special offer that they have for one trip in their first year, anywhere in the country that is serviced by Via, for them and their immediate family, at a very special rate. And that's our way of encouraging them to discover Canada, its landscapes, but its people as well. Même chose pour les Forces armées canadiennes. En 2011,
the same thing for the Canadian Armed Forces in 2011, set up a program to encourage people from the active armed forces and retired military staff and their family as a thank you for the courage and the devotion they've shown in serving the country.
Are meant to continue the legacy of the railway as a builder, a unifier of the country. And obviously, just a few days ago, our chairman, Paul Smith, joined the Bank of Canada Governor and the Minister of Finance, Jim Flaherty, in Ottawa to unveil the new $10 banknote, which will be released in the market in November. And it has on it those two symbols. John A. Macdonald, the visionary and the first Prime Minister of Canada, who was the leader to the establishment of the railway, and Via's Canadian service, the one that stops here in Winnipeg, and which is staffed by many members of your community, and services people who go from Toronto all the way to Vancouver. And 70% of the people who take that train, by the way, are Canadians. So it is a tourism offer to foreigners who come and visit Canada, but 70% of the people who take the Canadian are Canadians who wish to discover their country. So that is the network of Via Rail, and that's my only commercial plug. We service from Halifax to Vancouver up to Churchill, which is a route that may be very familiar to some of you here. 90% of our customers are in the Quebec-Windsor corridor, and as I mentioned earlier, our Canadian flagship, which is now in the banknote, goes from Toronto, stops in Winnipeg all the way to Vancouver, and the ocean service, who takes you to the Maritimes, goes from Montreal to Halifax. So, a country to discover. Today's Via Rail is adapting. We talked earlier about the renovation of the station, which is both unifying our past and glorifying our past, keeping what's best of our past, with modernization that is required by today's travelers, whether it be Wi-Fi or whether it be the experience on board. It still provides a great opportunity to discover this country. And as Canadian, and as a Canadian myself, I've lived in many Canadian cities. And what I've discovered is everywhere I've lived, I'm a different Canadian. When I vacationed in the Maritimes with my children when they were young, I had a different way of looking at things, different way of behaving, different food to eat, obviously, and a different attitude, much more relaxed, I was told, when I go back to the office in Toronto. And obviously, when I lived in Toronto and worked there, I was a very different fellow than I am now living in Montreal. And so within us, there are many Canadians. And discovering this country is an opportunity to discover that Canadian in you that you may ignore at this point. It's also an opportunity to get to know people, get to know Canadians. Yesterday, as I came from Saskatoon to Winnipeg by train, I shared 2 meals with people that I didn't know. One couple came from London, Ontario, and they had decided to see Canada in their retirement. And one young lady was coming home from studying in Edmonton. And so you discover who they are, what their story is, what their backgrounds are. And in there lies all the stories that we've heard this morning from both First Nations people as well as Canadians of European descent. We all have a story. And while we're sharing the story, we live a Canadian experience. While on board a Via Rail train, the food you eat is sourced in Canada, on land or in sea. The wines you drink are Canadian wines. Soon, the onboard entertainment will provide you movies and films and television series and documentaries from the National Film Board, from the CBC. So a truly Canadian experience. The heritage minutes that were mentioned will be on that screen as well. We have on the Canadian, again, that services Toronto to Vancouver, entertainers who are carried by us to go to their destination. We provide them room and board, and they provide our passengers entertainment, spontaneous entertainment on their journey. And so it's a great opportunity to, again, experience Canadian culture in a totally authentic, intimate way. So a Canadian experience. So that leads us to our view for 2017. I think the direction from our chairman was clear: take the train. So we're busy working on that, and we look forward to your support. But on a more philosophical level, Canadians should share their stories. Canadians should become tourists in their own country. They should not only discover the landscape, and we always come back to that because it is immense, it is vast, it is majestic, but behind that landscape are the stories of the people who made up Canada. And everyone in this room has a story that comes from their family, either an oral or a written story, of how they came to be a Canadian. And the strength of this country lies in those stories. You'll allow me to paraphrase Tolstoy in finalizing my thing here by saying that everything I know about Canada is solely because I love Canada. And I know you share that love too. So thank you very much for spending the time of day today with us. And I look forward to your stories. Thank you.
Yves, do you have time for a question? Merci, Yves. Before you take off there, I'm just wondering, you've traveled back and forth across Canada by train. We're in a fantastic via station here in Winnipeg. What's your favorite train station in Canada?
Really?
Good luck with that one.
I mean, it's really unfortunate because this looks too easy, but it is the Winnipeg station.
Oh, pop out.
I mean, not because my chairman is from Winnipeg or my vice chairman's from Winnipeg, and not because we're here today and you're standing between me and the door, but as a matter of fact, and I think my chairman will attest to that, I love this station. I think it is a great symbol. First of all, I love how the juxtaposition of this station and the rotunda with the one from the legislative building. I love that balance. I love the history of it in terms of the architect who designed this went on to do Grand Central Station in New York, my favorite town. And then the atmosphere of it. You can feel the history in this building. You can see the markings of soldiers going to war or coming back on the pavement under the rotunda. It's a glorious building, and that's why we're so proud to be investing $6.5 million to renovate it, to paint it, to preserve it. The atmosphere here, the environment, preserve the outside, right? Because this area is so pollution-free that the outside still has all the marking of the original stone. But the preservation of the inside is our responsibility. And so we're owning up to that responsibility at Via Rail, and I'm very proud to say this is my favorite station. Well, thank you for the question.
Well done.